have sensage now, can't I? Juro asked eagerly. Permission having been granted, he hastened to the priest's house and arranged their lunch on the porch. By the time the others joined him, he was sipping sake with one hand and broiling the fish they had bought with the other. Who cares if there aren't any cherry blossoms, he remarked. Feels like just a flower-viewing picnic anyway. Yajibe handed the priest an offering, delicately wrapped in paper, and told him to use it for the roof repairs. As he did so, he happened to notice a row of wooden plaques on which were written donors' names, together with the amounts they had contributed. Nearly all were about the same as Yajibe's, some less, but one stood out conspicuously. 10 gold coins, Daiso of Narai, province of Shinano. Turning to the priest, Yajibe remarked somewhat diffidently, perhaps it's a crush of me to say so, but 10 gold coins is a considerable sum. Is this Daiso of Narai as rich as all that? I really couldn't say. He appeared out of the blue one day toward the end of last year and said it was a disgrace that the most famous temple in the Kanto district was in such bad shape. He told me the money should be added to our fund for buying lumber. Sounds like an admirable sort of man. Admirable sort of man. He also donated 3 gold coins to Yushima Shrine and no fewer than 20 to Kanda Myojin Shrine. He wanted the latter to be kept in good condition because it enshrines the spirit of Taira no Masakado. Daiso insists that Masakado was not a rebel. He thinks he should be revered as the pioneer who opened up the eastern part of the country. You will find there are some very unusual donors in this world. Hardly had he finished speaking when a crowd of children came running helter-skelter toward them. What are you doing here? Shouted the priest sternly. If you want to play, go down by the river. You mustn't run while in the temple grounds. But the children swept on like a school of minnows until they reached the veranda. Come quick, cried one. It's awful. There's a samurai down there. He's fighting. One man against 4 real swords. Praise to Buddha, not again, lamented the priest as he hurriedly slipped on his sandals. Before running off, he took a moment to explain. Forgive me, I will have to leave you for a while. The riverbank is a favorite place for fights. Every time I turn around, somebody's down there cutting people to pieces or beating them to a pulp. Then men from the magistrate's office come to me for a written report. I'll have to go see what it is this time. A fight, chorused Yajibe and his men, and off they raced. Osugi followed but was so much slower on her feet that by the time she got there, the fight was over. The children and some onlookers from a nearby fishing village all stood around in silence, swallowing hard and looking pale. At first, Osugi thought the silence strange, but then she too caught her breath and her eyes opened wide. Across the ground flitted the shadow of a swallow. Walking toward them was a young, smug-faced samurai clad in a purplish red warrior's cloak. Whether or not he noticed the spectators, he paid them no heed. Osugi's gaze shifted to 4 bodies lying in a tangle some 20 paces behind the samurai. The victor paused. As he did so, a low gasp went up from several lips, for one of the vanquished had moved. Struggling to his feet, he cried, "Wait, you can't run away." The samurai assumed a waiting stance while the wounded man ran forward, gasping, "This fight's not over yet." When he leaped weakly to the attack, the samurai retreated a step, allowing the man to stumble forward. Then he struck. The man's head split in two. Now is it over? He shouted viciously. No one had even seen the drying pole drone. Having wiped off his blade, he stooped to wash his hands in the river. Though the villagers were accustomed to fights, they were astonished at the samurai's sang fright. The last man's death had been not only instantaneous but inhumanly cruel. Not a word was uttered. The samurai stood up and stretched. It just like the Iwakuni River, he said. Reminds me of home. For a few moments he gazed idly at the wide stream and a flock of white-bellied swallows swooping and skimming the water. Then he turned and walked rapidly downstream. He made straight for Yajibe's boat, but as he began untying it, Juro and Koroku came running out of the forest. Wait, what do you think you are doing? Shouted Juro, who was now close enough to see the blood on the samurai's hakama and sandal thongs but took no notice of it. Dropping the rope, the samurai grinned and asked, "Can I use the boat?" "Of course not," snapped Juro. "Suppose I paid to use it?" "Don't talk nonsense." The voice brusquely refusing the samurai's request was Juro, but in a sense it was the whole brushed new city of Edo speaking fearlessly through his mouth. The samurai did not apologize, but neither did he resort to force. He turned and walked off without another word. "Kojiro, Kojiro, wait!" Osugi called at the top of her lungs. When Kojiro saw who it was, the grimness vanished from his face and he broke into a friendly smile. "Why, what are you doing here? I've been wondering what happened to you." "I'm here to pay my respects to Kanzeon. I came with Hangawara Yajibe and these two young men. Yajibe's letting me stay at his house in Bakurocho. When was it I saw you last?" "Let's see, Mount Hiei. You said then you were going to Edo, so I thought I might run into you. I hardly expected it to be here." He glanced at Juro and Koroku, who were in a state of shock. "You mean those two there? Oh, they are just a couple of ruffians, but their boss is a very fine man." Yajibe was as thunderstruck as everybody else to see his guest chatting amiably with the awesome samurai. He was on the spot in no time, bowing to Kojiro and saying, "I'm afraid my boys spoke very rudely to you, sir. I hope you will forgive them. We are just ready to leave. Perhaps you would like to ride downstream with us." Shavings, like most people thrown together by circumstance who ordinarily have little or nothing in common, the samurai and his host soon found mutual ground. The supply of sake was plentiful, the fish fresh, and Osugi and Kojiro had an odd spiritual kinship that kept the atmosphere from getting stickily formal. It was with genuine concern that she inquired about his career as a shugyosher, and he about her progress in achieving her great ambition. When she told him she had had no word of Musashi's whereabouts for a long time, Kojiro offered a ray of hope. "I heard a rumor that he visited 2 or 3 prominent warriors last fall and winter. I have a hunch he's still in Edo." Yajibe wasn't so sure, of course, and told Kojiro that his men had learned absolutely nothing. After they had discussed Osugi's predicament from every angle, Yajibe said, "I hope we can count on your continued friendship." Kojiro responded in the same vein and made rather a display of rinsing out his cup and offering it not only to Yajibe but to his 2 minions, for each of whom he poured a drink. Osugi was positively exhilarated. "They say," she observed gravely, that good is to be found wherever one looks. Even so, I'm exceptionally lucky to think that I have two strong men like you on my side. I'm sure the great Kanzeon is looking after me. She made no attempt to conceal her sniffling or the tears that came to her eyes. Not wanting the conversation to get maudlin, Yachibe said, "Tell me, Kojiro, who were the four men you cut down back there?" This seemed to be the opportunity Kojiro had been waiting for his agile tongue set to work without delay. "Oh, them," he began with a nonchalant laugh. "Just some ronin from Obata's school. I went there 5 or 6 times to discuss military matters with Obata, and those fellows kept batting in with impertinent remarks. They even had the nerve to spout off on the subject of swordsmanship, so I told them that if they would come to the banks of the Sumida, I would give them a lesson in the secrets of the Genru style, along with a demonstration of the giant pole's cutting edge. I let them know I didn't care how many of them came. When I got there were 5 of them, but the minute I took a stance, one turned tail and ran. I must say, Edo has no shortage of men who talk better than they fight." He laughed again, this time boisterously. "Obata? You don't know him? Obata Kagenori. He comes from the lineage of Obata Nichijo, who served the Takeda family of Kai. Ieyasu took him on, and now he's a lecturer in military science to the shogun Hidetada. He also has his own school." "Oh yes, I remember now." Yajibe was surprised and impressed by Kojiro's apparent familiarity with such a celebrated person. The young man still has his forelock, he marveled to himself, but he must be somebody if he associates with samurai of that rank. The carpenter boss was, after all, a simple soul, and the quality he most admired in his fellow man was clearly brute strength. His admiration for Kojiro intensified. Leaning toward the samurai, he said, "Let me make you a proposition. I've always got 40 or 50 young louts lying around my house. How would it be if I built a dojo for you and asked you to train them?" "Well, I wouldn't mind giving them lessons, but you must understand that so many daimyos are tagging at my sleeve with offers, 2,000-3,000 bushels, that I don't know what to do. Frankly, I wouldn't seriously consider going into anyone's service for less than 5,000. Also, I'm rather obligated, just for the sake of courtesy, to stay where I'm living now. Still, I've no objection to coming to your place." With a low bow, Yajibe said, "I'll greatly appreciate that." Osugi chimed in, "We'll be expecting you." Juro and Koroku, far too naive to recognize the condescension and self-serving propaganda lacing Kojiro's speech, were bowled over by the great man's largesse. When the boat rounded the turn into the Kyobashi moat, Kojiro said, "I'll be getting off here." He then leaped onto the bank and in a matter of seconds was lost in the dust hovering over the street. "Very impressive young man," said Yajibe, still under the spell. Yes, Osugi agreed with conviction. "He's a real warrior. I'm sure plenty of daimyo would pay him a handsome stipend." After a moment's pause, she added wistfully, "If only Matahachi were like that." About 5 days later, Kojiro breezed into Yajibe's establishment and was ushered into the guest room. There, the 40 or 50 henchmen on hand paid their respects, one by one. Kojiro, delighted, remarked to Yajibe that he seemed to lead a very interesting life. Pursuing his earlier idea, Yajibe said, "As I told you, I would like to build a dojo. Would you care to take a look at the property?" The field in back of the house measured nearly 2 acres. Freshly dyed cloths hang in one corner, but Yajibe assured Kojiro that the dyer he had rented the plot to could easily be evicted. You don't really need a dojo, observed Kojiro. The area's not open to the street. No one's likely to intrude. Whatever you say. But what about rainy days? I won't come if the weather's bad. I should warn you. The practice sessions will be rougher than the ones held by the Yagyu or other schools around town. If your men aren't careful, they might wind up crippled or worse. You better make that clear to them. There will be no misunderstanding about that. Feel free to conduct classes as you see fit. They agreed on having lessons 3 times a month on the 3rd, 13th, and 23rd, weather permitting. Kojiro's appearances in Bakurocho were a source of endless gossip. One neighbor was hard to say, now they've got a show-off over there worse than all the others put together. His boyish forelock also came in for considerable comment, the general opinion being that since he must be in his early 20s, it was high time he conformed to the samurai practice of shaving his pate. But only those inside the Hangawara household were treated to be sight Hangawara household were treated to the sight of Kojiro's brightly embroidered underrobe, which they got to see every time he bared his shoulder to give his arm free play. Kojiro's demeanor was quite what might be expected, though this was practice and many of his students were inexperienced. He gave no quarter. By the 3rd session, the casualties already included one man permanently deformed, plus 4 or 5 suffering from lesser injuries. The wounded were not far off. Their moans could be heard coming from the back of the house. Next, shouted Kojiro, brandishing a long sword made of loquat wood. At the beginning, he had told them that a blow struck with a loquat sword will rot your flesh to the bone. Ready to quit? If you're not, come forward. If you are, I'm going home, he taunted contemptuously. Out of pure chagrin, one man said, all right, I'll give it a try. He disengaged himself from the group, walked toward Kojiro, then leaned over to pick up a wooden sword. With a sharp crack, Kojiro flattened him. That, he declared, is a lesson in why not to leave yourself open. It's the worst thing you can do. With obvious self-satisfaction, he looked around at the faces of the others, 30 to 40 in number, most of them all but visibly trembling. The latest victim was carried to the well where water was poured over him. He did not come to. Poor guy's done for. You mean he's dead? He's not breathing. Others ran up to stare at their slain comrade. Some were angry, some resigned, but Kojiro didn't give the corpse a second glance. If something like this frightens you, he said menacingly, you better forget about the sword. When I think that any one of you would be itching to fight if somebody on the street called you a thug or a braggart. He didn't finish the sentence, but as he walked across the field in his leather socks, he continued his lecture. Give the matter some thought, my fine hoodlums. You are ready to draw the minute a stranger steps on your toes or brushes against your scabbard. But you are tied up in knots when the time comes for a real bout. You will throw your lives away cheerfully over a woman or your own petty pride, but you haven't the guts to sacrifice yourself in a worthy cause. You are emotional, you are moved only by vanity. That's not enough, nowhere near enough. Throwing his chest out, he concluded, the truth is simple. The only real bravery, the only genuine self-confidence comes from training and self-discipline. I dare any one of you stand up and fight me like a man. One student, hoping to make him eat his words, attacked from behind. Kojiro bent double, almost touching the ground. An assailant flew over his head and landed in front of him. The next instant, there was the loud crack of Kojiro's loquat sword against the man's hip bone. That will be all for today, he said, tossing the sword aside and going to the well to wash his hands. The corpse was lying in a flaccid heap beside the sink. Kojiro dipped his hands in the water and splashed some on his face without a word of sympathy. Slipping his arm back into his sleeve, he said, I hear a lot of people go to this place called Yoshiwara. You men must know the district pretty well. Wouldn't you like to show me around? Bluntly announcing that he wanted to have a good time or go drinking was a habit of Kojiro's, but it was a matter of conjecture whether he was being deliberately impudent or disarmingly candid. Yajibe chose the more charitable interpretation. Haven't you been to Yoshiwara yet? He asked with surprise. We will have to do something about that. I would go with you myself, but well, I have to be here this evening for the wake and so on. He singled out Juro and Koroku and gave them some money, also a warning. Remember, you two, I'm not sending you out to play around. You are only going along to take care of your teacher and see that he has a good time. Kojiro, a few steps in front of the other two, soon found he had trouble staying on the road, for at night most of Edo was pitch black, to an extent unimaginable in cities like Kyoto, Nara, and Osaka. This road's terrible, he said. We should have brought a lantern. People would laugh if we went around the licensed quarter carrying a lantern, said Juro. Watch out, sir. That pile of dirt you are on came out of the new moat. You better come down before you fall in. Presently, the water in the moat took on a reddish cast, as did the sky beyond the Sumida River. A late spring moon hung like a flat white cake above the roofs of Yoshiwara. That's it over there, across the bridge, said Juro. Shall I lend you a hand towel? What for? To hide your face a little, like this. Juro and Koroku both drew red cloths from their obi and tied them kerchief fashion over their heads. Kojiro followed suit using a piece of russet silk crepe. That's the way, said Juro, stylish like, looks very good on you. Kojiro and his guides fell in with the bandana throng sauntering from house to house. Like Yanagimachi in Kyoto, Yoshiwara was brightly lit. The entrances to the houses were gaily decorated with curtains of red or pale yellow. Some had bells at the bottom to let the girls know when customers entered. After they had been in and out of 2 or 3 houses, Juro said leeringly to Kojiro, There's no use to trying to hide it, sir. Hide what? You said you had never been here before, but a girl in the last house recognized you the minute we went in. She gave a little cry and hid behind a screen. Your secret's out, sir. I've never been here before. Who are you talking about? Don't play innocent, sir. Let's go back. I'll show you. They entered the house, whose curtain bore a crest shaped like a bitter buckbean leaf. Split in 3, Sumiya was written in rather small characters to the left. The house's heavy beams and stately corridors were reminiscent of Kyoto temple architecture, but the garish newness nullified the attempt to create an aura of tradition and dignity. Kojiro strongly suspected that the swamp plants still thrived beneath the floor. The large parlor they were shown to upstairs had not been straightened up after the last customers. Both table and floor were strewn with bits of food, tissue paper, toothpicks, and whatnot. The maid who came to clean up performed her chore with all the finesse of a day laborer. When Onao arrived to take their orders, she made a point of letting them know how busy she was. She claimed that she hardly had time to sleep, and another 3 years of this hectic pace would put her in her grave. The better houses of Kyoto contrived to maintain the fiction that their raison d'etre was to entertain and please their customers. Here, the aim was obviously to relieve men of their money as quickly as possible. So this is Ito's pleasure quarter, sniffed Kojiro, with a critical glance at the knotholes in the ceiling. Pretty shoddy, I would say. Oh, this is only temporary, Onao protested. The building we are putting up now will be finer than anything you will see in Kyoto or Fushimi. She stared at Kojiro a moment. You know, sir, I have seen you somewhere before. Ah, yes, it was last year on the Koshu High Road. Kojiro had forgotten the chance meeting, but reminded of it, he said with a spark of interest. Why, yes, I guess our fates must be entwined. I should say they are, Juro said, laughing. If there's a girl here who remembers you. While teasing Kojiro about his past, he described the girl's face and clothing and asked Onao to go find her. I know the one you mean, and Onao said Onao and went to fetch her. When some time had passed and she still hadn't come back, Juro and Kuroku went out in the hall and clapped their hands to summon her. They had to clap several more times before she finally reappeared. She's not here, the one you asked for, said Onao. She was here only a few minutes ago. It's strange, just as I was saying to the master. We were at Kobutoke Pass and that samurai you are with came walking along the road, and she went off by herself that time too. Behind the sumier stood the frame of the new building. Roof partly finished, no walls. Hanagiri, Hanagiri. This was the name they had given Akemi, who was hiding behind a stack of lumber and a small mountain of shavings. Several times the searchers had passed so close she had had to hold her breath. How disgusting, she thought. For the first few minutes her wrath had been directed at Kojiro alone. By now it had expanded to embrace every member of the masculine sex. Kojiro, Seijiro, the samurai at Hachioji, the customers who manhandled her nightly at the sumier. All men were her enemies, all abominable, except one, the right one, the one who would be like Musashi, the one she had sought incessantly. Having given up on the real Musashi, she had now persuaded herself that it would be comforting to pretend to be in love with someone similar to him. Much to her chagrin, she found no one remotely like him. Hanagiri, it was Shoji Chinai himself, first shouting from the back of the house, now drawing closer to her hiding place. He was accompanied by Kojiro and the other two men. They had complained at tiresome length, making Chinai repeat his apologies over and over, but finally they went off toward the street. Akemi, seeing them go, breathed a sigh of relief and waited until Chinai went back inside, then ran straight to the kitchen door. Why, Hanagiri, were you out there all the time? The kitchen maid asked hysterically. Shh, be quiet, give me some sake. Sake, now, yes, sake. Since coming to Edo, the times when Akemi had sought solace in sake had become more and more frequent. The frightened maid poured her a large cupful. Shutting her eyes, Akemi drained the vessel dry. Her powdered face tilted back until it was almost parallel with the white bottom of the cup. As she turned away from the door, the maid cried in alarm. Where were you off to now? Where are you off to now? Shut up, I'll just wash my feet, then go back inside. Taking her at her word, the maid shut the door and returned to her walk. Akemi slipped her feet into the first pair of zori she saw and walked somewhat unsteadily to the street. How good to be out in the open was her first reaction, but this was followed very closely by revulsion. She spat in the general direction of the pleasure seekers strolling along the brightly lit road and took to her heels. Coming to a place where stars were reflected in a moat, she stopped to look. She heard running feet behind her. Oh, lanterns this time, and they are from the Sumier. Animals, can they even let a girl have a few minutes peace? No, find her, put her back to making money, turning flesh and blood into a little lumber for their new house. That's the only thing that will satisfy them. Well, they won't get me back. The curl wood shavings hanging loosely in her hair bobbed up and down as she ran as fast as her legs would carry her into the darkness. She had no idea where she was going and couldn't have cared less so long as it was away, far away. The owl. When they finally forsook the tea house, Kojiro was barely able to stand. Shoulder, shoulder, he gargled, grabbing onto both Jiro and Koroku for support. The three lumbered uncertainly down the dark, deserted street. Jiro said, "Sir, I told you we should spend the night in that dive, not on your life. I'd rather go back to the Sumir. I wouldn't, sir. Why not? That girl, she ran away from you. If they find her, she could be forced to go to bed with you. But for what? You wouldn't enjoy it then. Maybe you are right. Do you want her? Nah. But you can't quite get her out of your mind, can you? I have never fallen in love in my life. I'm not the type. I've got more important things to do. What, sir? Obvious, my boy. I'm going to be the best, most famous swordsman ever, and the quickest way to do that is to be the shogun's teacher. But he already has the house of Yagyu to teach him. And I hear he recently hired Ono Jiromon. Ono Jiromon? Who gives a fart about him? The Yagyus don't impress me much either. You watch me, one of these days they had reached the stretch of road along which the new moat was being dug, and soft dirt was piled halfway up the willow trees. Watch out, sir, it's very slippery, said Jiro as he and Koroku tried to help their teacher down from the pile of dirt. Hold it, Kojiro shouted, abruptly shoving the two men away. He slid rapidly down the dirt pile. Who's there? The man who had just lunged at Kojiro's back lost his balance and tumbled headfirst into the moat. Have you forgotten, Sasaki? You killed four of our comrades. Kojiro jumped to the top of the dirt pile, from where he could see that there were at least 10 men around among the trees, partly hidden by rushes. Swords pointed at him. They slowly began closing in. So you are from the Obata school, are you? He said in a contemptuous tone. The sudden action had sobered him completely. Last time you lost 4 men out of 5. How many of you came tonight? How many went to die? Just give me the number and I'll oblige. Cowards, attack if you dare. His hand went deftly over his shoulder to the hilt of the drying pole. Obata Nichijo, before taking the tonsure, had been one of the most celebrated warriors in Kai, a province famous for its heroic samurai. After the defeat of the house of Takeda by Tokugawa Ieyasu, the Obata family the Obata family The Obata family had lived in obscurity until Kagenori distinguished himself at the Battle of Sekigahara. He had subsequently been summoned into service by Ieyasu himself and had gained fame as a teacher of military science. He had, however, refused the shogunate's offer of a choice plot of land in central Edo with the plea that a country warrior like himself would feel out of place there. He preferred a wooded lot adjoining Hirakawa Tenjin Shrine, where he had established his school in an ancient thatched farmhouse to which had been added a new lecture hall and a rather imposing entrance. Now advanced in years and suffering from a neural disorder, Kagenori had been confined to his sick room in recent months, appearing only rarely in the lecture hall. The woods were full of owls, and he had taken to signing his name as Old Man Owl. Sometimes he would smile weakly and say, "I'm an owl like the others." Not infrequently, the pain from the waist up was agonizing. Tonight had been one of those times. Feel a little better? Would you like some water? The speaker was Hojo Shinzo, son of Hojo Yukikatsu, the celebrated military strategist. "I'm much more comfortable now," said Kagenori. "Why don't you go to bed? It will soon be light." The invalid's hair was white, his frame as skinny and angular as an aged plum tree. "Don't worry about me. I get plenty of sleep during the day." "You can't have much time left for sleeping when you spend your days taking over my lectures. You are the only one who can do that. Sleeping too much isn't good discipline." Noticing that the lamp was about to go out, Shinzo stopped rubbing the old man's back and went to fetch some oil. When he returned, Kagenori, still lying on his stomach, had raised his bony face from the pillow. The light was reflected eerily in his eyes. "What is it, sir?" "Don't you hear it? It sounds like splashing water." "It seems to be coming from the well." "Who would it be at this hour?" "Do you suppose some of the men have been out drinking again?" "That's probably it, but I'll take a look anyhow." "Give them a good scolding while you are at it." "Yes, sir. You better go to sleep. You must be tired." When Kagenori's pain had been subsided and he had dropped off to sleep, Shinzo carefully tucked the covers up around his shoulders and went to the back door. Two students were leaning over the well bucket, washing blood off their faces and hands. He ran toward them with a scowl on his face. "You went, didn't you?" he said curtly, "after I pleaded with you not to." The exasperation in his voice faded when he saw a third man lying in the shadow of the well. From the way he was groaning, it sounded as if he might die from his wounds at any moment. Like little boys begging for help from an older brother, both men, their faces oddly twisted, sobbed uncontrollably. fools, Shinzo had to restrain himself from giving them a thrashing. How many times did I warn you you were no match for him? Why didn't you listen? After he dragged our master's name through the mud, after he killed four of our men, you keep saying we are not being reasonable. Aren't you the one who has lost his reason? Controlling your temper, holding yourself back, bearing insults in silence. Is that what you call reasonable? That's not the way of the samurai, isn't it? If confronting Sasaki Kojiro was the thing to do, I would have challenged him myself. He went out of his way to insult our teacher and commit other outrages against us. But that's no excuse for losing our sense of proportion. I'm not afraid to die, but Kojiro is not worth risking my life or anybody else's over. That's not the way most people see it. They think we are afraid of him, afraid to stand up for our honor. Kojiro has been maligning Kagenori all over Edo. If he wants to run off at the mouth, let him. Do you think anybody who knows Kagenori is going to believe he lost an argument to that conceited novice? Do as you please, Shinzo. The rest of us are not going to sit by and do nothing. Just exactly what do you have in mind? Only one thing, kill him. You think you can? I told you not to go to Sensoji, not to go to the Sensoji. You wouldn't listen. Four men died. You have just returned after being defeated by him again. Isn't that piling shame on dishonor? It's not Kojiro who is destroying Kagenori's reputation. It's you. I have one question. Did you kill him? There was no answer. Of course not. I'll bet anything he doesn't have a scratch on him. The trouble with you is you don't have enough sense to avoid meeting him on his own terms. You don't understand his strength. True, he's young, he's of low character, he's coarse, he's arrogant, but he's an outstanding swordsman. How he learned his skill, I don't know, but there's no denying he has it. You underestimate him. That's your first mistake. One man pressed in on Shinzo as though ready to attack him physically. You are saying that whatever the bastard does, there's nothing we can do about it? Shinzo nodded defiantly. Exactly. There's nothing we can do. We are not swordsmen, we are students of military science. If you think my attitude is cowardly, then I will just have to put up with being called a coward. The wounded men at their feet moaned, Water, water, please. His two comrades knelt and propped him into a sitting position. Seeing they were about to give him some water, Shinzo cried in alarm, Stop! If he drinks water, it will kill him. As they hesitated, the man put his mouth to the bucket. One swallow and his head collapsed into it, bringing the night's death toll to 5. While the owls hooted at the morning moon, Shinzo silently returned to the sick room. Kagenori was still asleep, breathing deeply. Reassured, Shinzo went to his own cubicle. Walks on military silence lay open on his desk, books he had begun reading but had no time to finish. Though well born as a child, he had done his share of splitting firewood, carrying water, and studying long hours by candlelight. His father, a great samurai, did not believe that young men of his class should be pampered. Shinzo had entered the Obata school with the ultimate aim of strengthening military skills in his family's fief, and though one of the younger students, he ranked highest in his teacher's estimation. These days, caring for his ailing master kept him awake most of the night. He sat now with his arms folded and heaved a deep sigh. Who would look after Kagenori if he were not there? All the other students living at the school were of an uncouth type, typically attracted to military matters. The men who came to the school only for classes were even worse. They blustered about, voicing opinions on the masculine subjects that samurai habitually discuss. None of them really understand the spirit of the lonely man of reason who was their teacher. The finer points of military science went over their heads. Far more comprehensible was any kind of slur, either real or fancied, against their pride or their ability as samurai. Insulted, they became mindless instruments of vengeance. Shinzo had been away on a trip when Kojiro arrived at the school. Since Kojiro had claimed that he wanted to ask some questions about military textbooks, his interest seemed genuine and he had been introduced to the master. But then, without asking a single question, he began arguing with Kagenori presumptuously and arrogantly, which suggested that his real purpose was to humiliate the old man. When some students finally got him into another room and demanded an explanation, he reacted with a flood of invective and an offer to fight any of them at any time. Kojiro had then spread allegations that Obata's military studies were superficial, that they were no more than a rehash of the Kusunoki style of the ancient Chinese military test known as the Six Secrets, and that they were spurious and unreliable. When his malicious pronouncements got back to the ears of the students, they vowed to make him pay with his life. Shinzo's opposition. The problem was trivial. Their master ought not to be disturbed by matters of this sort. Kojiro was not a serious student of military science, had proved futile, though he had also pointed out that before any decisive step was taken, Kagenori's son Yogoro, who was away on a long journey, should be consulted. Can't they see how much useless trouble they are causing? Lamented Shinzo. The fading light of the lamp dimly illuminated his troubled face. Still racking his brain for a solution, he laid his arms across the open books and dozed off. He awoke to the murmur of indistinct voices. Going first to the lecture hall and finding it empty, he slipped on a pair of sori and went outside. In a bamboo grove that was part of the sacred compound of the Hirakawa Tenjin Shrine, he saw what he had expected, a large group of students holding an emotion-charged council of war. The two wounded men, their faces ashen, their arms suspended in white slings, stood side by side describing the night's disaster. One man asked indignantly, "Are you saying 10 of you went and half were killed by this one man?" "I'm afraid so. We couldn't even get close to him. Murata and Ayabe were supposed to be our best swordsmen. They were the first to go. Yasobe managed by sheer guts to get back here, but he made the mistake of drinking some water before we could stop him." A grim silence descended over the group. As students of military science, they were concerned with problems of logistics, strategy, communications, intelligence, and so on, not with the techniques of hand-to-hand combat. Most of them believed, as they had been taught, that swordsmanship was a matter for ordinary soldiers, not generals. Yet their samurai pride stood in the way of their accepting the logical corollary, which was that they were helpless against an expert swordsman like Sasaki Kojiro. "What can we do?" asked a mournful voice. For a time the only answer was the hooting of the owls. Then one student said brightly, "I have a cousin in the house of Yagyu. Maybe through him we could get them to help us." "Don't be stupid," shouted several others. "We can't ask for outside help. It would only bring more shame on our teacher. It would be an admission of weakness." "Well, what can we do? The only way is to confront Kojiro again. But if we do it on a dark road again, it will only do more damage to the school's reputation. If we die in open battle, we die. At least we won't be thought of as cowards. Should we send him a formal challenge? Yes, and we have to keep at it, no matter how many times we lose. I think you are right, but Shinzo isn't going to like this. He doesn't have to know about it, nor does our master. Remember that, all of you. We can borrow brush and ink from the priest. They started quietly for the priest's house. Before they had gone 10 paces, the man in the lead gasped and stepped back. The others instantly came to a dead halt, their eyes riveted on the back veranda of the time-worn shrine building. There, against a backdrop, formed the shadow of a plum tree laden with green fruit, stood Kojiro, one foot propped on the railing and a malevolent grin on his face. To a man, the student turned pale, and Sam had trouble breathing. Kojiro's voice was venomous. I gather from your discussion that you still haven't learned, that you have decided to write a letter of challenge and have it delivered to me. Well, I have saved you the trouble. I'm here, ready to fight. Last night, before I had even washed the blood off my hands, I came to the conclusion there would be a sequel. So I follow you sniveling cowards home. He paused to let this sink in, then continued in an ironic tone. I was wondering how you decide on the time and place to challenge an enemy. Do you consult a horoscope to pick the most propitious day, or do you consider it wiser not to draw your swords until there comes a dark night when your opponent is drunk and on his way home from the licensed quarter? He paused again, as though waiting for an answer. Have you nothing to say? Isn't there a single red-blooded man among you? If you are so eager to fight me, come on. Come on, one at a time or all at once. It's all the same to me. I wouldn't run from the likes of you if you were in full armor or marching to the beat of drums. No sound came from the cowed man. What's the matter with you? The pauses grew longer. Have you decided not to challenge me? Isn't there even one among you with some backbone? Alright, it's time now to open your stupid ears and listen. I am Sasaki Kojiro. I learned the art of the sword indirectly from the great Toder Seigen after his death. I know the secrets of unsheathing invented by Katayama Hisayasu, and I have myself created the Genru style. I'm not like those who deal in theory, who read books and listen to lectures on Sun Tzu or the Six Secrets. In spirit, in will, you and I have nothing in common. I don't know the details of your daily study, but I'm showing you now what the science of fighting is all about in real life. I'm not bragging. Think, when a man is set upon in the dark as I was last night, if he has the good fortune to win, what does he do? If he's an ordinary man, he goes as quickly as he can to a safe place. Once there, he thinks back over the incident and congratulates himself on having survived. Isn't that right? Isn't that what you would do? But did I do that? No, not only did I cut down half of your men, I followed the stragglers home and waited here, right under your noses. I listened while you tried to make up your weak minds, and I took you completely by surprise. If I wanted to, I could attack now and smash you to bits. That's what it means to be a military man. That's the secret of military silence. Some of you have said Sasaki Kojiro is just a swordsman, that he had no business coming to a military school and shooting off his mouth. How far do I have to go to convince you how wrong you are? Perhaps today I will also prove to you that I'm not only the greatest swordsman in the country, but also a master of tactics. Ha ha. This is turning into quite a little lecture, isn't it? I'm afraid if I continue to pour out my fund of knowledge, poor Obata Kagenori may find himself out of a stipend. That wouldn't do, would it? Oh, I'm thirsty. Korogu Juro, get me some water. Right away, sir, they replied in unison from in beside the shrine where they had been watching in rapt admiration. Having brought him a large earthen cup of water, Jiro asked eagerly, "What are you going to do, sir?" "Ask them," Kojiro sneered. "Your answers in those weaselly empty faces." "But did you ever see men look so stupid?" Koroku laughed. "What a gutless bunch," said Kojiro. "Come on, sir, let's go. They are not going to stand up to you." While the three of them swaggered through the shrine gate, Shinzo, concealed among the trees, muttered through clenched teeth, "I will get you for this." The students were despondent. Kojiro had outwitted and defeated them. Then he had gloated, leaving them frightened and humiliated. The silence was broken by a student running up and asking in a bewildered tone, "Did we order coffins?" When no one replied, he said, "The coffin maker just arrived with 5 coffins. He's waiting." Finally, one of the group answered dispiritedly, "The bodies have been sent for. They haven't arrived yet. I'm not sure, but I think we will need one more coffin. Ask him to make it and put the ones he brought in the storehouse." That night a wake was held in the lecture hall. Though everything was done quietly, in the hope that Kagenori would not hear, he was able to guess more or less what had occurred. He refrained from asking questions, nor did Shinzo make any comment. From that day, the stigma of defeat hung over the school. Only Shinzo, who had urged restraint and been accused of cowardice, kept alive the desire for revenge. His eyes harbored a glint that none of the others could fathom. In early fall, Kagenori's illness worsened. Visible from his bedside was an owl perched on a limb of a large cell-covered tree, staring, never moving, hooting at the moon in the daytime. Shinzo now heard in the owl's hoot the message that his master's end was near. Then a letter arrived from Yogoro saying he had heard about Kojiro and was on his way home. For the next few days, Shinzo wondered which would come first, the arrival of the son or the death of the father. In either case, the day for which he was waiting, the day of his release from his obligations, was at hand. On the evening before Yogoro was expected, Shinzo left a farewell letter on his desk and took his leave of the Obata school. From the woods near the shrine, he faced Kagenori's sick room and said softly, "Forgive me for leaving without your permission. Rest at ease, good master. Yogoro will be home tomorrow. I don't know if I can present Kojiro's head to you before you die, but I must try. If I should die trying, I shall await you in the land of the dead." A plate of loaches. Musashi had been roaming the countryside, devoting himself to ascetic practices, punishing his body to perfect his soul. He was more resolved than ever to go it alone, if that meant being hungry, sleeping out in the open in cold and rain and walking about in filthy rags, then so be it. In his heart was a dream that would never be satisfied by taking a position in Lord Date's employ, even if his lordship were to offer him his entire 3 million bushel fief. After the long trip up the Nakasando, he had spent only a few nights in Edo before taking to the road again, this time north to Sendai. The money given him by Ishimoto Geki had been a burden on his conscience. From the moment he had discovered it, he had known he would find no peace until it was returned. Now, a year and a half later, he found himself on Hoden-Gahara, a plain in Shimosa province, east of Edo. Little changed since the rebellious Taira no Masakado and his troops had rampaged through the area in the 10th century.